Today we are honored to welcome Atavia Minoundis to the show. I'm really excited about this, and I'm just really happy to interview today. How's your day going? How's you doing? How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm excited to be talking about this topic as well. I think it's going to be, hopefully be dropping some truth bombs today.
Oh, definitely. So I've heard a lot of people like in the gut health space,
Hmm.
autoimmune disease, and they always have like a very interesting story. And I'm very
Yeah.
curious, like how'd you get started in this? Like, not only how did you heal yourself, but like
Mm.
what was the spark for you that actually wanted to help other people on their own path and their own journey as well?
Great question. I think everyone will have they'll be able to recall just hearing that question, like their own experience and the moment that you knew that you couldn't take it anymore, like something had to change. For me, I always had problems with my gut ever since I was a baby. I'd always be, the kid with tummy bugs and stuff like that. So there was always kind of a bit of a weak spot for me in terms of my digestive health. But it got really bad when I was in my early 20s and I was super stressed. I was undiagnosed with ADHD. So I was like all over the place, really dysregulated, high stress levels, started drinking too much, not taking care of myself. And because I've always been quite low weight, I was trying to gain weight and I started drinking like 3,000 calorie protein shakes, which is just
Wow.
the thought makes me feel sick. Now, like, how did I do that? But I basically triggered like a lactose intolerance in myself. And I didn't realize that most people will develop a lactose intolerance at some point in their adult life.
Hmm.
And so I didn't realize what was going on and, how this suddenly happened. But that basically set me on a nice path to IBS and like anxiety and depression, because obviously the gut and the brain are connected. And I was just, probably like most people, frustrated with hearing the same thing from doctors like, oh, well, there's nothing we can see here in your tests, and, you just have to learn to live with it. And I just thought, oh, screw this. I need to find some answers myself. So decided to study nutritional therapy. And when I started seeing changes, I thought, oh my God, I have to share this with other people. Like, just even some
Definitely.
simple things that you can do, what a massive change it can make to your entire experience of just life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love that story because I find that in health space, it's either our own health issues or
Mm,
someone that we love. Like, it's how we get into it. So, yeah, I'm
yeah.
really glad you got to the other side of it and helping other people. So,
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
for
very
sure.
rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for the audience, what is IBS? And
Mm.
yeah, let's just start there. Just define it. What actually is it?
Mm. So IBS is a funny one because it's not a specific like disease like say Crohn's or celiac.
Mm.
IBS is sort of it's a disorder. It's a term used for it's like an umbrella term used for a bunch of different symptoms, and you can have loads of different symptoms and different types of IBS. So you could have IBS-D, which is like diarrhea predominant, IBS-C, which is constipation predominant. You can have like different subsets of IBS within the
Hmm.
IBS umbrella. But it basically describes a bunch of symptoms where your gut is irritated and we don't know why. So generally you'll see people who, have gone back and forth to their doctor and they're like, well, there's nothing that we can see. You haven't got any autoimmune condition. You've not got anything that we can notice. So it's just an irritated gut, like an irritable bowel. Um, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah, it's a bit of a funny one because it's not really a specific thing.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
just very
sense.
vague.
Yeah, and also like another note is like anytime we have like a disease or whatever it is, like everybody's gonna experience it differently. That's just another note on the
Mm,
side. Like if it's diabetes, like no, there's no like one experience of that thing. So
mhm,
um
mhm.
yeah, so further going down that track, what are like some causes of this? Is it lifestyle? Is it genetic? Like what are the causes of this and why are people getting this in their own lives?
Mm. So definitely you can have a genetic predisposition. There's some research around I think ADHD and IBS with your father as well. So if your father has IBS, you're like more likely
Really?
to have ADHD or vice versa, but it can have a genetic link. But with what I do with people in clinic is look at four factors. Like there's a four-factor framework that I work with where we have to look at each of these four areas and how much it's impacting you and your gut health, because everyone's going to have these to some level. So we look at the gut microbiome, so like the organisms in your gut and the level they're at, because we need them in a very specific level, like the bacteria you have. They all play a very specific role. If you have an overgrowth of a pathogenic one, it might cause more gas and then you might get bloating and flatulence. Or you have an undergrowth of certain bacteria, they might not be able to digest food, so then you get loose stools. So that's the first thing we look at is gut microbiome. Then food intolerances, like which foods do you have intolerances to and that are causing your symptoms. Then inflammation in your gut, so your gut becoming inflamed, usually because of those previous two. and then stress. And stress is such a big one. And people always are shocked by just how much of an impact it has. Because the gut and the brain are literally connected by a bunch of nerves. So whatever's
Definitely.
happening in your brain will happen in your gut and vice versa.
Absolutely. Like, so if the microbiome, could that be some certain like infections? Are we talking
Mm-hmm.
uh like dysbiosis or SIBO or anything like that, or is it just kind of all over the place with that?
Absolutely, yeah. SIBO is a very specific issue that's can be a bit more difficult to treat than IBS, but 100% dysbiosis. So it basically is your gut microbiome is imbalanced. So people kind of say about like good bacteria and bad bacteria. That is a simplified way of talking about it. It makes it more easy to understand. But in terms of the types of bacteria you have in your gut, you need them all in a very specific level. So you could have a very slight overgrowth of something that should be there, but it should just be there 5%. But now you took antibiotics and then you killed off some beneficial bacteria. So those pathogenic bacteria grew to 10%. So it's double what it should be. And that can cause things like
Definitely.
bloating. So yeah, it's looking at how your microbiome is, but for each person, it will be different. So yours might be an undergrowth of something, someone else's might be an overgrowth of something. It's going to be very particular to each individual.
For sure, for sure. So we got those four factors in there. Um,
Mm.
so with this condition, like what are some symptoms? I know you got on over a little bit, like what are some symptoms that most people are experiencing? Um, and would you say there's testing that people would get to make sure like this is what they
Mm.
have or
Mm.
things like that?
Yeah, for sure. If you are experiencing any gut problems and you think you might have IBS, first thing I always say, although medical doctors can't necessarily like cure IBS, you always have to go there to make sure they rule everything else out. Because if you've got something else like Crohn's or like celiac, A, what you do for IBS isn't necessarily going to be enough to support that. And B, it's actually dangerous to not get those things looked at. So I would go to your GP anyway or your physician and get other things ruled out, like more sinister things. And then in terms of how to manage IBS, it really comes down to how it presents for people. So most people I see in clinic have bloating as their main issue or acid reflux they've got as an issue now. That's quite a common one I'm seeing happen more often now than it has before. But it will be like incomplete emptying, like when you're going to the toilet. Unpredictability of your stool habits. So it just doesn't feel right. Maybe you have more loose stools or it's just constipation. Um, so yeah, it will present differently for different people, but generally the thing I see the most is definitely bloating.
Okay, that makes sense. So would you say that this is reversible? Is there hope for people if you
Mhm.
have it? I mean, obviously you got your story, so I'm just like, what would you say? Is it always reversible? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think again, this is a really annoying answer. It's really it's really particular to each person because it really depends on why. So I've worked with people where they've had horrendous symptoms for years and years, and then we've literally just taken out one intolerance food, and then they've been like, oh, that basically
Wow.
90% of my symptoms have gone now, like it's fine.
Yeah,
Then I've worked with people who it's so much more like embedded than that, and there's more to do with the gut microbiome that takes longer to kind of regenerate, and it's more of a management thing where it take longer to kind of get to a place where your symptoms are reduced, but you need to manage it ongoing. Like you need to kind of adapt your lifestyle to reduce your symptoms. So yeah, there's definitely hope that you can live without, I say like I live most of the time symptom free. I have to be mindful of what I do so that I don't kind of like, trigger myself. But yeah, for sure you can have a life where this isn't ruling it all the time.
that's good to hear. Awesome. So, would be some common food triggers that you see in people with this? Is there things you see over and over again, and
Mhm.
maybe something to look out for?
Yeah, I mean the classic ones that are the easiest to start with are lactose and gluten. So this isn't going to be true for everybody, but I do see a lot of lactose intolerance and gluten sensitivity. But with gluten, the problem with that is that people tend to have tests for, say, they'll have a test for celiac, and they come back they don't have celiac. So you don't have any kind of like autoimmune condition. So they think gluten will be fine, but they don't realize you can have non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which is what I have. And because gluten can be in so many different things, like different, obviously it's in bread, it's in pasta, it's in wheat, but it can also be trace amounts in different foods. Wheat can be used as a binder and things like that. It's harder to identify. So those are the two main ones that I see when people come to me in clinic and they remove them, they tend to feel better.
Definitely, for sure. So given all those are the factors that cause it,
Mm.
what are some strategies that we can do to actually reverse this? Like just starting simple, like because we know that it definitely is reversible in many cases. And like if they're going to their conventional physician, I'm sure they're we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But like, what are some things that can we can actually do to start to get well? You think?
Mm. I think the first thing I would look at is doing a food intolerance test to see
Okay,
what is going on in your gut. I use a lab called Cambridge Nutritional Sciences, but that's a really good way of looking at what's triggering your gut, because even if your IBS was triggered by your gut microbiome, potentially, if you're still eating intolerance foods, all that's going to do is exacerbate the problem. Um, Really, it's one of the easiest things to do is to look at foods and food intolerances. But then you can maybe look at, certain probiotics. Obviously, that's more difficult to do when you're not under the care of like a health professional. But looking at a broad spectrum probiotic and seeing if that has any impact. And one of the most easy things to do, although it's kind of difficult for most people, is to look at stress levels, because it has such a huge impact on your gut. Like it literally makes your gut hypersensitive. And we do live in a very stressy world. Like we're just
for
constantly
sure.
stressed, with bombarded with information all the time. And people overlook the importance of stress. But that is something I would say that if you start addressing and reducing your stress levels, it's going to have a positive impact on your gut.
Awesome. So if they're going to their conventional physician, like what are they telling them? Like, are they giving them certain medications, or
Mm.
like what are the results that they typically see in a conventional setting?
Yeah, I mean, most people I work with have been back and forth to doctors for years, myself included. And the classic thing, I don't know about in the States, but over here it's like, oh, we'll just try some peppermint capsules. Like peppermint capsules is not going to get rid of your IBS. Like it might help to manage them, but it, you don't have IBS because you've got a lack of peppermint in your system, basically.
Right.
So generally, that's the thing that we tend to hear, and I know a lot of my clients get frustrated by that. Or they'll look at if you've got constipation, they'll give you laxatives sometimes, or the opposite, maybe binders if you've got loose stools. But one of the most worrying ones I see is when people have acid reflux and they put on acid reduction tablets, which can lead to not absorbing nutrients properly, especially for women. As we age as well, you end up losing bone density that can lead to like precursor for fractures and things like that. Lacking magnesium, which you need for energy and relaxation. So those are the classic ones I hear of in terms of doctors and physicians.
Nice. So the medication that they're receiving, are they getting like long-term health benefits? Are they not? Are they seeing like just symptom reduction as you usually see the medication? Or
And with those medications, I mean, it depends on the individual, but generally, I've seen people who've been put on acid reduction tablets and they haven't seen any difference whatsoever. Like they literally
yeah,
don't see any
I mean, I would
benefit.
imagine that because there's like they're not.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, if they give them any like lifestyle tips, you think at all?
Probably not. That's why they end up coming to me, to be honest.
That's
But I
really
think
like
something I say to people, they're always shocked when I tell them when they've been put on acid reduction tablets and they've gone on the highest dose and they haven't worked. And I'll say, but you might have low stomach acid, and people just don't understand how that can cause acid reflux. But that can
yeah,
be a problem because say you're trying to your stomach has low acid and then it can't digest food. Your
exactly.
gut isn't going to accept that food. It's like, nope, nope. The only way is up for that. I don't want to accept that into my intestines because it's going to make it's going to damage my gut. So it pushes the food back up. So just small tips like that, people are just like blown away by it because they just had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't know, you don't know, right? It's like
Hmm.
we know better, we do better. Like we just kind of operate with this paradigm that we can't really get well. We just manage the symptoms. And that's really as good as
Mm,
it gets for a lot of people in most conditions, unfortunately. But I think things are changing. Like people like us, people are getting the word out, and people becoming more educated, self-empowered, and
mm.
that's the direction that we're heading. So I'm happy about that for sure.
Yeah, me too. And it is really like as soon as you have some empowerment around your health, it just makes a huge difference. Even if you still have the health issue, just your experience of it becomes different. And it just makes it so much more, yeah, easy to live with. Not necessarily just easy in general, but it makes it more bearable.
100%. So with the stress, I know it's a big piece, not just in this, but in all chronic disease.
Mhm.
Like, what are some strategies that you used for with people to actually to minimize these and actually kind of become more in a parasympathetic state to actually heal the gut?
So a couple of things. One of the things I do is mindset based, and then the other things are more body based. So mindset based, and I have to remind myself of this very often, is to shift into a curiosity mindset. So what I mean by that is if you say someone's really annoyed you, or you've received a message and you think, oh, how rude of them, like why did they say it like that, or why did they send me a thumbs up emoji, that's so passive aggressive, instead of like assuming that and thinking and coming into a judging mindset about your symptoms or about whatever situation, move into a curiosity mindset of, I wonder why this is happening, or I wonder what's going on with that. So with your symptom, like, I wonder why this has been triggered. What's happened in the past 24 hours that is different from before? As soon as you move into that mindset, not only are you reducing your stress response, but you're also increasing your ability to see what's happened, because you're going from stress state to curiosity state. Just means that you can take in information and sift through information better. And in terms of practices that I encourage people to do, I mean, there are so many you can choose from to basically tone up your parasympathetic nervous system, so your resting nervous system. Because if you're, let's be honest, most of us are stressed most of the time, right? To some level.
For sure.
You don't just kind of go from stress to neutral. You have to actively relax. Like you have to actually make yourself relax, right? So the more that you do those practices, the more that will become your habit, like your habitual response. So things like just really easy, simple things like deep breathing, like breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 2 seconds, and releasing really slowly for 4 seconds. That immediately slows down your breath, tells your brain that everything's okay, turns off the stress state, and turns on the relaxation state. If you just do that several times throughout the day, that's toning up your nervous system to tend towards relaxation rather than stress.
Definitely. I really like that mindset piece because having that self-awareness is so key. Because we
Mm.
can have like we just experience the thing that day to day just kind of normal for us. And if we don't actually ask like these empowering questions, like we don't actually know what is causing it or what we're doing. And if you do something different, oh, this may be triggering that, right? Just having that self-awareness,
Mhm.
that's so key. It's really powerful there.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also puts you back in the driver's seat, like rather than taking you into a panic state where you feel like you don't have any impact, it gives you more empowerment and you can kind of see things a bit more clearly.
Definitely. I'm curious, like, what was the mindset piece in your healing journey? Like, what did you, what really moved the needle for you in that space? And like, what would you recommend even more so for that? 'Cause I really like that. I think it's so important.
Yeah, I think definitely the curiosity piece and also practicing like radical acceptance. So, which is basically what it says is what it says in the tin, like radically accepting a situation. Because I think when you have health issues, you so quickly go to panic state and stress and frustration because it just is so disempowering and you don't want to experience what you're experiencing. But if you practice radical acceptance of this is the situation I'm in right now, I'm not in denial about it, I'm accepting fully that this is what's happening and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're just resigning yourself to a life with those symptoms, but it means that you can work with the reality of where you're at. So for me, I was like, okay, well, I don't know, I've tried all these different things and I don't know how to quote unquote cure myself. So let me look at, do I need to work with a professional to give me more information? Do I need to try, a specific kind of probiotic? Looking at the reality of my situation and what would help, rather than just trying to power on with my life and just pretend that the symptoms aren't there or just wishing that they weren't there.
Hmm. Definitely. I mean, speaking for myself personally, like, um, in my own healing journey, like that was the most important thing, the mindset piece, because if I didn't, I mean, I was like 19 years old having to take naps. Like I couldn't like make it throughout the day. It was
Mhm.
so bad. And basically I had to have the strength and the inner fortitude to actually keep going. And like that character piece allows you to stay the course in so many
Mhm.
aspects. Like understanding like getting to the other side of this, you can actually help other people. And like your current circumstances don't have to dictate your future reality in a
Yeah,
sense. So just
totally.
being able to understand that and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, I think that's so important. And for me, it was like small wins every day, just making progress. Like maybe I'll see a plateau, and then a few months I'll get better, and then just keep on going along that path, and then learn different things, put them in actions. Because knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied is power and wisdom. So it's taking that and everything that we learn is putting into action.
Definitely. And I really like what you said there about taking plateaus and then like accepting where you are, but that's not where you're always going to be. Because if you just try to power ahead with it, like if you've got chronic fatigue and burnout, if you just try to act like you don't have chronic fatigue and burnout, guess what, you're just going to get more burnt out. Like it's not going to like help you in any way. But if you work with your body, it's going to make it so much better. So I always say to people, your gut isn't out to get you. Like it's not trying to ruin your life. Like it's not trying to fuck up your life and make things difficult for you. It's trying to tell you something. So if you can work with it, and when you have a flare up, like when I have flare ups, I'll rest and be like, right, what does my gut need? I need to, I've been really stressed. I need to honor my body and just have a few nights of relaxation and take it easy on what I'm eating. And then you can, your symptoms go down, then you can continue living your life. Whereas if you try and fight against that, it just ends up adding more fuel to the fire.
Exactly. Listening to your body is so important. And like we have a lot of static online these days, as you said, to like so many environmental things. So it's kind of hard to tune in. So it's why it's kind of so important to keep these practices in place so we can keep that finger on the pulse, if you will. Just kind of pay attention to what's actually going on so we can make those incremental progress every day. And another thing, you touched on this just now. It's like our body's not trying to hurt us. Like a disease, honestly, is like it's your body trying to save you because it's like you're putting all these negative inputs in there knowingly or unknowingly, and it's really trying to save yourself in a way. Like for diabetes, it would kind of it's basically for insulin resistance. It would kind of make you do that so you don't have all this sugar going on in the bloodstream, which would literally kill you at some point. It's like so the body's kind of a miracle in that sense.
And it's like a manifestation of things that you don't want to you're trying to ignore. So like chronic stress, and like why do people always get really ill after they've been stressed for a long period of time? I wonder. So your body's like, well, I'm going to manifest this somewhere. So because you can't just like stress me out and then expect nothing to happen. So yeah, it's like learning to work with your body and not seeing it as the enemy, but seeing it as something you can work with and honor it, like you say.
Definitely. Let's go down that stress piece just a little bit more. So environmental stressors, like there's so many, and maybe we can just touch on a few of them that are really impacting people. I see a lot myself, but I'm just curious what you have to say on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just generally, if you imagine our window of tolerance to stress, like I'll explain it as say 0% stress is you're completely tranquil. You almost feel like you're high because you're so tranquil, you're so calm. It's like floating in a salt bath with music playing, and you have your body is fully relaxed. When was the last time you felt like that? Probably never. Like probably can't remember when. And then 10 is like pure absolute stress anxiety. Our problem is in modern day because we have so many demands on us all the time. Our threshold is we don't go from 0 to 10. It's usually like somewhere between, our norm is between 5 and 10.
Right.
So even when we're at 5, we think we're relaxed, but actually we're not. We're just at a lower level of stress than we were before. And I think what I see in people a lot is we're almost conditioned to be stressed. So you get a WhatsApp text, and that activates the stress response low level in your body and your brain. Then oh crap, I need to cook dinner tonight. I need to go to the shop and get something for dinner. Or I need to pay this bill or this deadline. There's a constant stream of information and demands made on us that triggers stress because our stress response is helpful. It's there to tell us that, it's there to motivate us, but it's become sort of maladaptive. So we're always in a low level or sometimes high level of stress just from day-to-day life. You don't even have to experience a specific stressful situation. We're just almost conditioned to be in stress response more than relaxation.
Yeah, we are. I mean, so there's like notifications, there's bright lights, there's like all these things, but like in the health space, like we touch on this a lot. Like let's just say lights, for example, fluorescent lighting, LED lights. Like most people just don't pay attention to these things, and they do have impacts on our brain and all that. So like you can use like different software. I think you got the blue light blockers on. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And then just doing things like that is not using lights if you don't need to, right? And just certain things like that. And then there's you got perfumes, you got formaldehyde from furniture. All these things add up, and if we don't have this awareness, it's just kind of be floating in the background. Things from cookware, like it's not that if you have a little bit of this in your life, it's not gonna do it. It's not gonna cause a disease. But it's all these things that add up over time. We're
Mhm.
basically stacking the conditions against us, which makes like environment for disease to grow very easily. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cumulative effect, isn't it? And it's like, if you imagine however old you are, who are, to your listeners, whoever old you are now, that age you're at now, every year you've lived has led to where you are now. So every experience you've had throughout your life, since even before birth, since conception up until how old you are now. So for me, that's like 33 and a half years of, whatever I've experienced, toxins in my environment, constant stimulation from social media, or, if I
Hmm.
go to the supermarket, it's going to be like, say, bright lights, which trigger, makes your brain think that it's daytime again. It messes up your circadian rhythm. So it's like an accumulation, and we can only take so much. There's a reason why chronic disease is being triggered in more people these days than it used to be.
For sure. It's unfortunate, like, chronic disease is supposed to take a long time, right? But like, there's
Mm.
so many kids with chronic disease these days. It's like,
Mhm.
I think it was like 40 some percent I just saw, something like that. It's really not good. In terms of obesity, like I'm here in
Mhm.
America where 3 out of 4 people are overweight in some sense.
Mhm.
And it's not, I don't want to say it's people's fault. It's really the system itself. Because like there's
Mhm.
so many like things that are working against us.
Yeah.
And like we're naturally supposed to be healthy. And
Mhm.
like our ancestors didn't think about this at all. Like it was just health was normal. Health is supposed to be normal. But then we got so many things we just gotta take control of. And it is a journey for sure. And
Mhm.
just getting better every day. It's not about being perfect, it's about progress and just
Yeah.
taking action every day. That's what I do and continue to do even after being well. And because the conditions are changing as well. Like there's
Mhm.
different things always coming, so you just gotta be aware of those things.
Definitely. And yeah, like you say, I really liked your point about it's not about perfection, it is progress, because you're going to be around for decades to come, right? So you don't just reach a point where, oh, I'm well now and I don't have to think about it again. The reality is your wellness and your health is something that you will have to think about every day of your life if you want to feel well. So it's something that, you don't have to do 100% perfect all the time. It's just getting in tune with yourself and knowing what helps and what hinders.
Yeah. And switch gears just a little bit. We got into the testing a little bit.
Mm.
Um, but if people were to go see a doctor, is there a specific form that you would point them to, like a functional medicine doctor, where they have
Mm.
more answers, you think? Because if they want to work with people, I know you do
Mhm.
things as well. Um,
Oh, I think you cut out there. Oh, you're back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what would you say to that?
So yeah, I mean, the lab that I use for testing is called Genova Diagnostics, Genova, and I think they are based in the US. So that's a really good testing company. They'll assign you to they'll kind of give you a practitioner to work with, but that will be really in-depth testing that will look at your ability to absorb food, the proteins you're producing, the enzymes you're producing, the if you've got parasites or if you've got bacterial overgrowth or undergrowth. But that will give you a very comprehensive, in-depth picture of what's going on in your gut, far more than for us the NHS would do, because obviously all they're interested in is looking for disease, and if there's no disease, then there's almost like that's outside of their remit. So yeah, I'd highly recommend people look at Genova and work with a functional practitioner for sure.
Yeah. What about food sensitivity testing?
Yeah, I do food sensitivity testing with all of my patients. I do blood testing, so blood spot testing, and that can be really useful in indicating leaky gut. So if you've got a gut that's leaky, so basically has like microscopic holes in it, which is letting tiny microscopic pieces of food or toxins through into your bloodstream, which can be a precursor to autoimmune disease and like long-term
Yeah, yeah.
conditions. So yeah, definitely would recommend that. Yeah, for sure.
Is it a test for IgG? Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Is
you
there?
can get different. You can get them for. I think you can get IgG, IgE, and IgA. But obviously they're different in terms of if it's an allergy. But it will tell you like what you can choose, basically which one you do.
Okay. Is there a specific like brand you'd recommend for that?
Yeah, I will use Cambridge Nutritional Sciences, who I
Okay.
think like in the US as well. They're quite good. Yeah, they make it very simple to understand their test as well, because I think sometimes that can be a barrier for people who aren't trained in this area can be
Yeah.
understanding the test, but that one's quite easy to implement and understand.
Awesome. So when it comes to gut health and autoimmune disease, like
Mm.
there's always like a gut healing component, right? With leaky gut and all that. Do
Mm.
you see a lot of that in your clinic?
Yeah, I don't really see people with autoimmune, to be honest. I see more people before they get to that point, I think.
Okay.
So people come to me when they have lots of gut symptoms, and then they definitely have levels of leaky gut, but they haven't quite triggered that autoimmune yet. But maybe they would have if they hadn't have done anything about it.
Yeah.
Because I think people, when they get to the place where they get autoimmune disease, they tend to then be told by the doctor, you take this tablet for forever, or this is just something you live with, isn't this how you live with it? Whereas the people who are before that stage, they're in the place where they're like, what's going on? I need some answers, and the doctor's saying everything's fine, there's nothing more they can do. So then they go looking for answers from like a functional practitioner. Whereas if you're at the point where you've got autoimmune and you're told by your doctor, oh, this is what it is and this is a tablet you take, you just think, okay, fine. You're not in that place where you're looking for other input.
Right.
So yeah, I tend to see people before they get to that stage.
Yeah, it's like it's unfortunate because when they go to the doctor, they see these things, and if they just continue down this line, there's definitely going to be something, but they don't have
Yeah.
anything to do anything in the moment,
Mhm.
which is, man, that's just, yeah, I see
It's
that a lot
frustrating.
too.
Yeah, it's really
Uh,
frustrating.
so on that same track, do you do like things in the clinic to help people heal their gut as well?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll do the protocol of looking at removing triggers, repopulating with beneficial bacteria, helping your gut lining. Something that people overlook a lot is your
Mhm.
gut lining is often inflamed, and it's damaged, sort of like having sunburnt skin. It's like it's inflamed.
For
So we
sure.
look at kind of, removing all the triggers, looking at what led you to that point in the first place. Is it mainly stress? Was it like a significant stressful event? I've worked with people who their symptoms were triggered when they were bullied at school, and then it never went away again because it was a significant traumatic event that manifested in their stomachs and their gut. So we'll look at, okay, well then stress is your main trigger now, so we need to support your stress levels, and how do we reduce those? But yeah, for sure, looking at helping the gut to heal.
Yeah, I'd imagine adding things in like bone broth, L-glutamine, aloe
Mm.
vera, colostrum, all these things. Like I've used those personally. Super helpful. I mean, because as we talked about before, like the doctors don't. I mean, they just don't have the tools necessarily. Like they
Mm.
mean well, but it's like
Mhm.
they're taught in a system that isn't allowing them to express health.
Mm.
Unfortunately.
Mm. And yeah, and we are also very often segregated from each other. So we kind of are almost pitted against each other, where it's this modality or this modality, and actually that they're both right, and they're both in the right situations. But it's more, where does our remit end and where does yours begin, and vice versa. And if we could work together, that would be incredible, right? Because yeah, it is a lack of. I've actually done a few episodes on this on my podcast about like medical gaslighting, even when they don't realize that that's what they're doing. But that's how I kind of was medically gaslit of like, oh, you were just, there's nothing wrong with you, but your experience is that there is something really horrendously wrong with you. But to them, like you say, the modality they learn in, you're fine. So you're just stuck between that rock and hard place.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because like as doctors, we're really supposed to listen to the patient, right?
Hmm.
And doctor, like that word is Latin for teacher, like being able to educate the patient. And if we're not educated, like we're taught like certain things, right? And
Hmm.
like you said, like everything has its place. Like my philosophy is like all tools are available. So what can we actually use? But if we're only taught in one system, that's not because it's really great for emergency care. But then
Mm.
I mean, most of the things that they're seeing is not an emergent, like they're not like super like traumatic, like
Mm.
car accident or something, right? It's
Yeah.
like these chronic diseases that they just don't have the tools for. And
Hmm.
again, like I said, the system is changing, and I'm really happy to see that. As I mean, here we spend like 4 trillion a year in healthcare in America.
Wow.
It's insane. And the problem is, you would think that we would have number one care in the world, but it's actually like number
Mhm.
38. And the chronic disease rates get worse every single year.
Mhm.
And like effectively 1 trillion of those dollars are actually wasted on like unnecessary research or procedure things like that. And I don't know, if we just take a portion of that and put it into health, like where
Mhm.
would we be? You know?
And if people could just know as well, I think it's just people knowing this stuff and knowing that it doesn't have to be disease or nothing. Like there is an in-between space, like, you know, and really simple things that anyone can do with hardly any money. You know, it doesn't have to be really expensive either. But just that if people were just more aware and have more knowledge, it would, you know, put them back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we think like health has to be expensive, but it really doesn't. I mean,
Mm.
there's so many things we can do for free, like you know, just getting high quality sleep, getting outside in nature, getting the sun, right? And then of course, like I think organic is gonna be the best. But you know, just if you're not eating like frosted flakes in the morning, you're eating like conventionally raised eggs, that's a win. You know, you're eating real food, and then we can upgrade from there. So
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many basic things. And like, I think people also just get really surprised when you say that it's so basic. So something I say to people with bloating, something that really improves people's bloating is having 12 hours rest between meals. So having a dinner at 7 p.m. and then not having breakfast till 7 a.m., that's 12 hours that your gut has to do its actual like reparation work, where it's not overburdened with food, and it can help to sort of, you know, start to reduce the inflammation, and, you know, does the body scan while you're asleep and look at what areas it needs to heal. And that's free. You don't have, you
for sure.
literally do nothing for that. You actually take something away. So it doesn't have to be, you know, some $100 symbiotic or something like that. It can be the most simple things that can help.
Do you incorporate intermittent fasting at all in your protocol?
I don't specifically encourage it, just because it's something that for me, I don't like as a lifestyle factor. If I did intermittent fasting, I would faint. Basically, I just wouldn't be able to handle it.
Okay.
And I think from what I've seen from people, it works really well for some people, but then for others, it's quite bad. Especially I think for women and for people with ADHD, can be difficult because you end up going into like glucose. You know, you have low glucose levels, and it can trigger your adrenals. So when I say 12 hours between meals, I always say when you're resting, like at night. I do have clients who do intermittent fasting, but it's just not something I really know enough about, to be honest, to utilize.
Okay, makes sense. I mean, yeah, 12 hours. That's like the basic it's a basic time. That's like the time frame that they start with. I mean, that's pretty much.
Oh, so it kind of is, but just without
Yeah, yeah,
realizing.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, I do it then. I just didn't know it.
Definitely. I know you touched on probiotics a few times in the microbiome. Like, what can we do to repopulate that gut? Is there 'cause my understanding is like, of course, like getting like fermented foods and basically just not destroying the gut lining in the first place with like excess antibiotics or pesticides. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on where you're at in your journey, because for most people that I see, they're at a place where they need a supplement, and they need sort of like food and lifestyle itself won't kind of remedy it. We need to give it a helping hand. But generally, like the biggest thing that I see people do, I'm like, please don't do this, is drinking tap water. Because tap water has so many trace elements of, like, I know you're like, yep, I know, like so many trace elements of so many. I know someone who I used to work with who wrote their thesis on the level of drug, like actual narcotics that are in tap water from people dumping drugs in the toilet when they got raided. And she was like, yeah, my thesis had that. You literally have so many things in your tap water, and it's such poor quality. It can cause like so many problems with your gut. And it can be as simple as buying like a $30 like water filter. So you're just filtering your water and having good quality, because that's something that you actually have all the time. Is the most, you know, overlooked part of gut health is something like water. And if you don't have good quality water in your gut's not going to be lubricated. It's not going to be able to digest food. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because chlorine is like what they use to basically sanitize the water. Now, chlorine is also known as bleach, and it's a mild antibiotic that we're taking in like every single day. So it's not something to take lightly. I mean, it's great we have because there's certain countries that water looks like look like mud, right? So I'm grateful for that. But there's better ways. Like we can use like ozone. We can use other things, and then we got the fluoride in the water. We got heavy metals. It's just like you said. It's not something to be drinking if you want to stay healthy for sure.
Definitely. And it's something that we overlook because we're so fortunate to be able to take it for granted. We do take it for granted, and then we overlook it so much. So whenever I talk to people about water, they're like, what? Shouldn't we be talking about fermented foods and stuff? I'm like, yeah, well, we can for sure. But also, if you're going to continue drinking, this kind of
Yeah.
water, you're just taking one step forward and one step back.
Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind is like all real food has its own microbiome. Like you're eating the food
Mhm.
with a microbiome, like a blueberry. It doesn't have to be fermented necessarily. I think fermented is great because it has a lot of different
Mhm.
strains and all that, like sauerkraut, kimchi. I
Mhm.
think that's all good. I do both, but essentially just avoiding the triggers that kind of destroy the microbiome, like
Yeah.
uh, antibiotics, for example. Like even the FDA themselves, they came out with reports saying over 50% of the prescriptions for antibiotics are either unnecessary or questionable at best. I would say
Mm.
it's much higher, honestly, but
Yeah.
it's good that they're saying that. And because people go to a doctor with a cold to get antibiotics, not realizing they don't even kill
Mm.
viruses, they kill bacteria.
Mhm.
So they're it's really like a placebo effect. I mean, I don't it can be helpful and life saving in some instances, but really you want to stick to what's natural. If it's cold, just come on,
It's
just
not needed.
it's
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's not allowed anymore. Like we have in our doctor surgeries, we have posters that are like, if you have a cold, you don't need antibiotics, so don't ask for it because you won't get it. Because it's people just have that almost conditioning of like, oh, I need antibiotics, and they actually don't realize what they're even doing or why they need them or why they don't need them.
yeah, over here we give them like all the time because if there's another thing I saw was like if the patient asks for it, the doctor is 70% more likely to actually prescribe it. So it's
Oh.
like it's kind of you know if the patient wants it, they kind of give it to them in a sense because that's
Mm.
what they're going. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah, that's scary. And yeah, what it's doing to your gut is no wonder why so many people have IBS these days.
yeah, I mean for sure it's like so many different things to think about. Some Another thing is pesticides in that same realm. There's because pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, like the suffix "side" means to kill, right?
Mm, mm,
And it does this by being neurogenic or estrogenic. But
mm,
also we have to keep in mind that these things are designed to kill very tiny organisms, and we are made up of these tiny organisms. And there's so many reports showing how these affect our microbiome. So
mhm.
pesticides, there's another thing to. So in your mind, like, what's the importance of organic and just eating like real clean food in a sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really important. It's so hard to do. I don't know about over there in the US, but it is quite hard to source here in the UK, and it's made to be quite expensive. So if you can't do organic, I say to people buy local because at least we know it's been grown locally. It's not been shipped over from really far away. It's from the soil in your natural microbiome soil near where you live. But I mean, organic is always best. Like it's the best thing. You don't want meat that's had loads of like antibiotics pumped into it and all the chemicals and hormones. You don't want veg that have had, been sprayed by pesticides because, like you say, then you're every day just eating chemicals that are killing off your bacteria, microbiome. But I also feel like just letting people know, the dirty dozen. So the foods that you should
Hmm.
prioritize to do organic. So you can't do everything organic. I don't think that's possible for most people. But there are certain foods, if you just Google the dirty dozen and the clean 15, it will show you which foods you should definitely get organic and which you can get away with not doing organic, maybe like a banana, because a banana's got such a thick skin on it, you take it off anyway, it's been protected. Whereas a blueberry, if that's sprayed with pesticides, that blueberry has no real protective layer. You're going to basically be eating those pesticides.
Right. That's from the environmental working group. Is that right?
Mm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think they put that out. The Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah,
a good one. It's a
yeah.
retro
It's a
one.
pretty useful list. Uh, I used that in the past, just kind of looking through those things because it's kind of helpful to know, just being able to like if something has like a shell, like an avocado, those
Mm,
typically they don't really penetrate the shell as much. So just
mhm.
little things like that. If you're shopping
Yeah.
and also going to like local farmers markets, like you said, locally shopping locally, that's really
Mhm.
important as well because if you get food shipped across the world, it's going to lose its nutritional value every single day. So
Yeah.
getting more nutrient dense foods locally, that's really important. Eating seasonally, all these things kind of make up a healthy microbiome in a sense.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that's also if you can, don't wash all the dirt off the food, right? It's okay to have some dirt on it. And because there's actually a lot of microorganisms in there. As long as like it's a clean source and you're not like it's not like glyphosate sprayed and all that. I'll say it's it's all good.
Yeah, we don't have that over here. We just have all of our food looks like it's been sterilized, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, honestly, you go into a supermarket and it just looks like it's all been created in a lab somewhere. But yeah, I mean, it's also just knowing that different foods feed your gut. So like if you have a really meat heavy, I've watched people with a really meat heavy diet, they've had a really significant overgrowth of a pathogenic bacteria because different foods feed different bacteria. So making sure you have everything in balance is also really important because different foods, you need a diversity of foods to feed your diverse microbiome in your gut.
Yeah, that's important note there. Having a variety of foods. There's a lot of people that kind of eat the same thing every day. I got into that a little bit as well, but switching up the food intake and just rotating the vegetables nutritionally, that's a really good idea because there's going to be certain nutrients. And actually, our microbiome shifts 25% season to season. So incorporating seasonal foods, whatever the land provides, that's what our ancestors did. They ate what the land provided. And I think it's cool to get these things like certain supplements I just wouldn't have access to. But yeah, it's really important as well. So
absolutely, yeah, and just having a a diversity and rotation. Like you shouldn't be eating the same thing all the time forever, right? It should be like a diversity. And we would have naturally done that with the seasons, but now we can get food all year round. We don't do that. We just think we can eat whatever we want all the time. So we end up depriving our guts of the different types of foods we need.
Right. I mean, it's a nice to have, but basically, like, just keeping that in mind, like, just incorporating it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but yeah, just keeping that in mind, incorporating what is growing locally. Maybe do some research on what is seasonal in your area. Just incorporate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be as simple as that. Just getting back to basics.
Yeah. Something just came up real quick. So with the stress, do you have any adaptogens that you recommend for people? Like basically supplements that help adapt to the stress response and incorporating those in the protocol?
Yeah, for sure. I look at things like, magnesium can be useful, though that can be difficult if you've got IBS, it can tend you towards diarrhea. But in adaptogens like ashwagandha can be really useful for adapting your stress response. That's definitely a whole other thing that we could talk about. I do have another meeting in a minute, so I need to jump off. But would be happy to like do a whole episode on stress and adaptogens if you wanted to. That would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So yeah, so I mean, this is great. We touched on the factors of it. We talked about the medications and the mindset piece, which is probably my favorite part because, as you mentioned, it's so important in many aspects in all chronic diseases. And if there's any last point you'd like to finish up on, just let me know.
Yeah, fab. Thank you. Yeah, I just think for people just to do one little bit at a time and not let it overwhelm you because, like you say, it's a journey and it's something you do every single day. So anything that you can do today that will improve your health, that's great. Just take it one step at a time.
Absolutely. And if people would like to learn more about your work and what you do, where can I go to see that?
So they can find me on my own podcast, Gut Reactions, which is specifically for IBS. So if you have like gut health problems in specifically, or you can find me on Instagram, and I'll give you the handle to put in the show notes and for the podcast as well because my name is quite long, so I don't think people would remember how to type it into Instagram. So yeah, I'll give you those to put in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insights with us. I enjoyed this, and
Me too.
have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Yep. See ya.